So, my name is Dan O. Uh, I run Free Music Empire and stuff. Uh, and one of the things I've learned over my time here is just to go where the good conversations are. And I've always had a great time talking to Roger, aka Camo Bucket Hats, uh, on Twitter. And I reached out and was like, you know what? Let's touch base about all the incredible things happening in this music right now. And I want your perspective. I want your topics. I want to hear what you think about all this. And Roger gave me a yes. It's awesome. So I am so excited. And talk to me about the first topic and why you wanted to talk about it.
Well, the first topic is why AJ Suede is important. And I wanted to talk about it because it's exactly the kind of topic that exists in the chatter, but is in danger of slipping through the cracks. Meaning that I think there is chatter about why AJ Suede is good,
Yeah.
right? And
Yep.
it's not surprising because his music is really good on like certain fundamental levels. So if you happen to come across it, you're unlikely not to notice it, right? But to talk about why he's important because of his technique and because of how he does things, it is possible that the chatter has not caught up to everything that he's doing and could let it get out there in a time where we're kind of experiencing like a flood of interesting music. It could really get lost, the subtleties and what makes his music, and not just his music, because what he puts out there is really, it's funny, it's really rapidy rap, but it's not.
We got to get into that. I was, I was
But
thinking
it's
about,
also not.
I was thinking about this a lot. There's a lot to go on, but first of all, I want to give credit to Gary Suarez, right? So
Mhm,
I was on Cabbages, Cabbages Hip Hop,
mhm,
subscribe. I'm a
mhm.
subscriber. I'm in the Discord, and I was
Right.
posting a poll that I put on, which is like, I don't know, best flows in hip hop or whatever, right? Or
Mhm,
MVP, something like that. And Fatboy Sharif was on it, and you know,
mhm.
everybody, a bunch of really good candidates. And Gary got mad. He was like, I can't believe people aren't voting for Suede on this.
Wow.
He was like, Suede is a star. And I've never forgotten it. I've never forgotten that reaction that, like, you know what? That can't get lost in this discussion.
Right.
AJ
Right.
Suede is not just really great at the craft, and we'll get into the craft, right? AJ Suede's a fucking star. Like, in a bunch of different ways. Um, and so he's not, because I we're in this world, right, connected to the underground, where
Mhm,
like we love these people that they know they'll never be stars. We know they'll never be stars. We accept it. We enjoy their music at this level, right? But it's important to note when, like, no, that person could go all the way, you know,
mhm.
and run the world, and Suede really could, um, in my estimation.
Yeah. Shout outs to Gary Suarez.
Mhm.
Always one step ahead, right?
Yep, yep.
And I didn't even realize that he had this observation. But there's so much that's true to it. But I think what I would say is this, like, there is a notion of what a rap star could be that emerges like circa 87, I would say. Let's
Mhm.
just like put it in
Yep.
perspective.
Yeah, yeah.
and it sticks in the public consciousness for at least 10 years. It's a blueprint, if you will. And really, it's really like people like Salt and Pepper,
Run
who
DMC, right?
really
Run DMC, that kind of.
to an to an extent Run DMC, and to the extent that Salt and Pepper become like this feminized
Yep.
like vision of that, yes. And it's really aiming for what could be both relatable and larger than life, and how to be larger than life without losing the people, but not appearing like that's what you're cynically trying to do, but also getting really good at accomplishing that.
Yep.
Actually taking the steps to actually get good at that. And it would seem to be something that like disappeared around the time Jay-Z actually had the amount of money he was talking about, and
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
the
Yeah,
amount
yeah,
of economic power that he was bragging about. Around the time he achieved that, this kind of idea seems to be like obsolete, right? But AJ Suede is that the voice and the persona that he deploys seemingly effortlessly comes across on every single song that he does as super engaging
Mhm.
and super relatable. And it's so carefully modulated that you forget that he is the orchestrator behind it. And you really think like this dude is there with you, just relating the things that he observes or is concerned about, and it just happens to fall into these rhymes that are sometimes so simplistic. You're thinking like, damn, I should have thought of that. How did no one kind of pair those two words, or how did no one make that observation, or how did nobody take this kind of cliched phrase and then wrap it with this ridiculous dictionary
Yeah.
um choice, and he's doing it bar for bar for bar, and you're waiting for it to break up. But the worst that ever happens is that he hits you with something that is so simple in terms of the end rhyme choice that you think for a sec, oh, this is the filler part.
Yeah.
This is the Greg Nice filler part where maybe he's just trying to come off zany. Um, but then he'll switch again and just end the verse off on something that reveals that he actually just like delivered some seminar level thing to you,
Yep.
right? And then the other part of it is that he doesn't exclude you from any of it. So in cementing himself as this star, he really lets you on board.
Yeah.
But it's purposeful, and he's tactical about it, but he knows how to do that in a way that doesn't make you feel like you're being gassed up and taken for a ride. It really feels like some sincere affirmation of what you might be going through, or a sincere warning of something you should know about, or a simple statement of how you have to handle your grown man or woman
Hmm.
biz
Hmm.
with enough confidence to successfully get through it. And we really haven't seen much of that lately, because this flood of music is all this like decidedly artful stuff that starts in media res, right? Like someone's rapping in a
Right.
verse and you can't place it, city or
Mhm.
room kind of thing. They say some wild stuff and it's
Yeah.
cool. It's like it's more open than rap used to be. It's more interesting in a certain way. But a lot of times, like I'm thinking of like a Fly Anakin
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
type thing. Like you're always diving into the middle of some extremely elaborate social context that will
Hmm.
never be ascertained simply track by track. Like we're gonna have to wait and listen to this dude's whole career spanning decades before we come to like a full
Right.
understanding of all that he was talking about, which is cool. Hey, let's have rappers who have long and prolific careers with works of difficulty and sophistication. I'm all for it.
And it's become it's created these disciples, like
Right.
disciples of Billy Woods, who are like, combing through and they're always pulling what he's talking about and reading books because of the album. It's awesome to see. Yeah.
But this is still music.
Right.
This is still
Right.
supposed to get your ass up in the morning. This is still supposed to get your ass to work. This is supposed to still have you survive long enough to your lunch break. This is supposed to help you get back home. This is supposed to help you take the kids and drop them off. This is supposed to move your body when you felt like you haven't had the chance to do that from your own volition. This is the most, it's supposed to make you sit there and be like, damn, that's some ill shit. That makes me feel like the first time I heard Resurrection by
Yep.
Camo, right? It just hit me with all these lines, and some of them are silly, and I'm just laughing at it. It's supposed to still all do all those things.
Right.
Somebody has to still have some kind of devotion to that as part of their technique.
Right.
And
Right.
nobody necessarily asked for it, seemingly, but we do all need it, and we do flock to it when someone brings it. And really, when you think about the underground, it's not like um, the most typical approach, or it's not the approach that a lot of underground artists feel super comfortable about, or can do without like sounding like extremely corny or going in like a kind of backwards direction where the mechanics of being a rapper or a writer in the rap form become like the object
Mhm.
of, or the subject rather of the writing, which is extremely limited and kind of worn at this point.
Right.
Like if
Right.
you tried to do like a J Live kind of thing at this point and talk about what your pen does, or what kind of steel becomes malleable at the mere sound of your voice, if you
Yeah.
stuck strictly into that, you really couldn't cement yourself as the kind of star you need to be to shine.
Right. You're mid-career
Right,
cannabis at that point, right? You're just like
right,
talking about chemistry compounds and everybody's like, all right, man, that's cool. Whatever.
right. You're hoping that the abstract idea of the subject itself will generate enough verbiage to fill up bars, as opposed to what AJ Suede does, which is take this expansive view of the lexicon, or rather the zeitgeist, right? The
Mhm.
cultural zeitgeist as it's flowing through um, the forms of technology, which I believe he is a worker in,
Right,
or
right.
if he's,
I think
I
that's
think so. I don't know him. I haven't really seen too many interviews. I don't know if he's super public like that, but it seems to be like he has worked in some sort of data aspects of life,
yeah.
because he likes to draw out content from that, but he's not delving into it for its own sake. He's recognizing how it's actually shaping the human experience right here and right now, and he's going to tell you all about it. Um, and you get the relief, you get the comic relief, not because he forces some sort of punchline out of it, but because he exposes some of the absurdity of it,
Right.
the tragic comic aspect of it. But he doesn't get too heady about it too fast.
No, no. I mean,
Right?
I wanted to go back to something you said earlier, which I thought was really important because it reminded me there was an interview. I might have been at Drink Champs or way back when I did Drink Champs. Steve Stout said, like, you guys talk about eras in rap in 10 years. That's ridiculous. He's like, an era in rap is 2 to 4 years,
Okay.
right?
Right. Right.
I like that. I've always liked that idea.
Mm-hmm.
Um,
Mm-hmm.
so when you're talking about 86, right? 86 to 90, the template is like Kane, Rakim, the kind of super MC, right?
Mm-hmm.
And then after that, you kind of have probably kicks off in 92, to be honest, right? 92 to 96 or 7 is like the what I would call the wild barbarian era, where
Okay.
everyone had so many bodies on every verse, right? Like sometimes I feel like the game would be so good in that era. You just put him back in 94 and he could just kill lots of people on songs, you know?
Right.
Um, but that's like what he's projecting, right?
Mhm.
And so then Pac and Biggie die, that kind of goes away. The pop space isn't healthy for rap, so the underground becomes healthier,
Sure.
and that's where you get the kind of the entrance of the art CMC, right? You
Mhm.
get like, and it takes many forms, right? It's idea, it's Micah Nine, it's on and on and on, right?
Sure.
And
Sure.
so what is interesting about Suede is so to fast forward a bit, where we're at right now, there is no meta narrative, there is no singular archetype, right?
Sure. Right.
It's shattered into 1,000 pieces.
Right.
But Suede has all the puzzle pieces, and he can give you a little bit of everything, you know?
Right. Um, though I would say this, that inclination to do the work, to piece it together is out of that 87-ish era. And I think to me it's a KRS-One
Yep,
specific influence where the idea is this. No matter how simple the backdrop, which is not to say that AJ Suede's choice of production is typically or usually simple, although sometimes it is. Sometimes it kind of is. No matter how follow easy it is to follow the sonic expression, and no matter how simple the sentence form, the result, the effect is going to be meaningful.
yep,
Meaning that we're going to touch upon in the verse things that people are familiar with. We're going to challenge them with a couple of things that might be less familiar, but we're going to drag them over there
yep,
and get them to a level of comprehension. And we're going to make it memorable in the way that rap is supposed to never stop evoking, meaning that there is an energy implied and then enacted by the vocals, and you're supposed to respond to it, right? Like we're never ever going to completely forsake the Busta Rhymes scenario thing,
no,
right? We
right,
cannot just toss that baby out with the bathwater just because it's okay and time to be artistic, right?
right, right.
Right.
No,
And
it's yeah,
he's not necessarily obstreperous like that
no.
either, right? He's Suede, right? He has like one of the greatest like MC names that anyone has ever
Oh yeah, yeah.
conjured. It's just
Agreed.
an incredible name, right? Like, and
Agreed.
it's also the other thing where you might think like, why didn't I just make that my pen name, right?
Yep.
You didn't because you didn't stay as focused and committed as AJ Suede did. That's why
That's
you
it.
did,
I
right?
mean,
And you didn't
and
draw from enough influence to
right.
come up with it.
To give Sway credit, because I was thinking about these two worlds that he masters, right? Uh, and you tell me how I'm doing here, but there's a
Mhm,
whole world of artsy hip hop, right?
mhm,
That where the fans that support that artsy hip hop won't they won't shit on a hardcore rapper who's thoughtful, but they won't support him. You
right.
know what I mean? That
Yeah.
they're in their
Mhm,
world with their artsy hip hop, and that's what they're gonna do, right? And then there's the hardcore hip hop people who are looking for bars, bars, bars. We're looking for spitters who are arguing, over, you know, Ransom v, Tyler Ferris or what, they're arguing this kind of stuff. And these are separate worlds. And Suede, coming from Seattle, intimately knows the artsy situation, right?
Yeah.
Like, just has a lock on it. Yeah, I get it. I get what's happening in Portland. I get what's happening in Seattle. You you're not going to throw me off by having an artsy beat or collective. I get it. But he's also what I would classify as a ready to go MC, right? He's like real functional, you know? Like when
Yes.
someone says, "Oh, Suede had a crazy turnaround time on that verse," I'm like, that does not surprise me, right? Seems like someone you can plug in and he goes.
So
So
KRS-One
it's too
out
me.
the
Yeah.
KRS-One out the shelter.
Yeah.
Scott LaRock shows up in his gold
Yep.
and says, "Hey, look, I'm a social worker, but at night I'm getting busy in this thing that's happening
Mm-hmm.
out there, and you have a gift and you can't waste it. Are you down? You ready to roll?
Right.
We're gonna go where the Supreme Team hangs
Right.
out and
Yeah.
vets who is worthy of being on that stage and not getting robbed the second they leave. Is you down?"
Right.
And we know he was down because the proof is in the pudding. And AJ Suede comes to us literally out of left field, right? Geographically,
Yep.
culturally,
Yep.
literally out of left field, ready to go. But we also know from context where that ready to go ness comes from, literally.
But his voice sounds like he's in the boot camp clip, you know? Like he has a
Yes.
very classical but if you played, you could play AJ Suede for Cormega and he'd get it, right?
Right.
He'd get it.
That's an interesting barometer.
He would get it
Would
because that flow
would
would sing for him, if that makes sense.
would right, the Cormega test, right? The litmus. Yeah, I that's right. So right. Like he's ready to go because the voice itself, it would be extremely difficult to totally fail as a rapper if
Right.
that's what you're working with. Right? Like what
Yeah.
could you really do to completely miss the mark when that is what you just have in your arsenal from nature, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
Right.
And I'm not like a super technical, like I don't rap. It's not my fucking
Mhm.
thing. And you're welcome, by the way. Um, but in terms of like his writing, right? What
Mhm.
you talk about the voice and how great the voice is. In terms of the writing, we've talked about it a little bit.
Mhm.
It's Suede knows exactly what to put behind the curtain, right? Like he knows he's gonna say blind to the bullshit, pull up the curtain, Geordie LaForge, right? And if you
Right.
get it, you get it, and you're
Mhm.
gonna love it. You know, if you get that heart reference, you're gonna be so excited. He's gonna put that behind the curtain, right? And he's gonna lift the curtain at the right time. There's so many people that don't know what to accentuate in their verse.
But that is a technical thing. It's funny that you point that out because it seems like that's not actually a technical thing, that it really exists at the level of poetry, right? It's a poetic choice. Like
Right.
what's the perfect word to use here? It is that, but when it comes to rapping, that's a technical thing. So when Busta Rhymes does the scenario verse, right? It isn't just that rah rah like a dungeon dragon like fits, hits, and lands in a particular place
Mhm.
because Busta Rhymes knows how to make that happen no matter what. He's raised off a dance hall vocals. So from a technical level, he's pretty much like can't be fucked with, right?
Right.
So
Right.
he'll make that fit. The technical part is also choosing that for what it's going to sound like and also how it's going to be received combined with how it's going to be received mentally as a cultural signifier and coming into a zone where you can do that multiple times in a verse and you can kind of time it with in rap it's probably changed by now, but I remember definitely in the 90s, it was always a 4 bar subject switch up, right?
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
You're kind of on your subject for 4 bar. Like Nas was always kind of like very like disciplined
Hmm.
about this. Even people who were like a little bit more abstractly imaginary, like Prodigy,
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
similar style, but like a little bit more daring at times, would still kind of adhere to that, or
Right.
at least come back to it if he meandered away from it. And AJ Suede knows how to do that. He can even truncate it uh shorter than 4 bars.
Mm.
Um, I see a little bit of Large Professor in that in a
Ooh, I like
way.
it. Yeah.
Right, like Large Professor would like bust out with the Mamba Jahambo, rhymed with Rambo kind of
Yeah.
thing. And it didn't matter that Nas crushed that song at the beginning and you
Right.
were still in shock. And that's the only reason like you even hear Large Professor's voice. By that time, you're drawn back in
Yeah.
because you're dealing with a technician who is also attuned to the zeitgeist, which
Hmm.
makes sense for a rapping data industry worker,
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I don't.
right?
Yeah. I mean, I don't. But like, it's when we talk about AJ Suede being magic, there's elements of it, right? The voice,
Mhm.
um, but what he holds behind the curtain is absolutely an important
Mm,
element to log, right?
mm,
That he's directing and producing, you know. And I, as a ready to go MC, I he to me he had to grow into that. Like the first stuff I heard from Suede,
mhm.
I'm like, these are good collections of songs. I like this guy, right? But there's a difference between a spitter and a songwriter, right?
Yes,
By the time we
yes,
got to Avada Kedavra, I was like, oh shit, this is an album. This is and this is why Metatron's Cube is such an important part of 2022 for me, because
right.
that is an album that stands next to anything that came out in 2020.
Yeah, it kicked off the year,
Yeah.
right? I
Yep.
don't know if it was the very first thing that I really wanted to hear or I was excited about it, but it had to have been one of the first because I
It
think
was
it
my
was like
first album
second.
of the year. It was my first album of the year, I believe.
Yeah, yeah. Him being freed from the production duty, but obviously having a lot of insight into what he chose, gave him the space to make sure that it was all sewn up really tightly, but also that he took the most daring route to
Mm-hmm.
get to that level of catching wreck, right? Like hitting you with the lines and the ideas that you're going to remember, you're going to respond to in the moment, you're going to come back to. Um, you're going to want, in some ways, to study it like it was a Billy Woods record, but it's not really necessary to do all that. Um, because unlike a Billy Woods record, and this isn't really like a disrespect to it, like
Mm-hmm.
at no point did you need to undergo the same amount of effort to basically appreciate it, and that's by design.
Well, Woods, there's a similarity in terms of Woods where Woods, I always catch Woods rubbing dirt on the music. So he reminds his audience, this isn't sweet, and I'm not sweet, and I'm not your cute little, valedictorian. Like, this is going to have Boldy James on it. This is going to have
True.
Gabe Nandez on it. This is going to be about moving packs. Like, so, and in the sense and the similarity, I guess, with Suede is you go from Vox Machina, which is just a classic, beautiful, artsy song, to Mr. Motherfucking Esquire, unhinged on Respect the Architect. Beautiful movie.
I wondered ever since I first heard that, I really wondered who made the decision or how that actually came about. And I'm referring to Mr. Esquire's
Yep, yep.
completely unhinged,
I love it.
seemingly no, I love it too. It's incredible. And yeah, I've always wondered, like, were you actually gonna make this a skit? Did you have a verse that was more linear or obvious in where it was going, and you messed up a word, so you said this instead, but AJ Suede was like, no, keep going.
Right.
Or I have no idea, but that's part of the fun of it. And Suede's verse, it's not his most memorable, though it's pretty good. Um, but there is something to say about that actually winding up on the album.
It's
Mm.
very hard to plan moments of chaos into your album, right? I feel like this is all going to make sense, except for this portion right here where I'm going to let this chaotic force just go, right? And
Mhm.
I can't wait for it to be chaotic, right? I can't wait for a kid to be talking in the back. Like this is going to be awesome.
But when it comes to Mr. Esquire's verse, I think a funny aspect of it, looking at it in retrospect, is like it is linguistically the kind of content that is typical in the social media sphere in a way
Yep. Yep.
that AJ Suede finds infinitely entertaining and inspiring as an object of critique and observation, right? Like it's kind of like a normative thing for someone to go off really brashly or seemingly arrogantly and make kind of unspecific threats. Like this is all I guess, you can think about like that message board era. It
Right.
kind of starts, but like at some point, like it becomes permissible to even do that with, identifying information attached to it. It's not totally anonymous. It's
Right.
not it's not as untraceable. Um, it enters like a new level of antisocial absurdity and combativeness, which Suede managed to isolate like how that's actually charming by like
That's it.
having this feature in a well in kind of an odd breath of fresh air coming from Esquire. We know to be an artist that can express an eccentric personality, but this even seemed uh, unpredictable.
Yeah. And
You just didn't see it coming.
by
I did not see it coming.
and so Suede has been reaching out all over the place, right? Where like he puts Metatron's cube out through Fake Four, right?
Okay.
And that reaches this whole group of, I mean, it's Keshi's crew, the super artistic, you know, clique, right? And then you see him popping up on Wrecking Crew stuff and
Yeah.
all this, with Prem Rock and with you know songs with Zilla and everybody, and like you see him stretching out, like working with Taylor Banks. You see him just laying
Yeah.
verses with all these people in all these different corners of this world, and trying to just be wherever. Like he ready to go MC, right? If Rosenberg called Suede and was like, "Jump on this next Real Late compilation," do you think he'd say no?
Nah. He that okay, so that's like another aspect that I find interesting, and what makes him great, right? Like we're not talking about like someone who is fake humble. We're
Yeah,
not talking about someone who's trying to craft an everyman narrative through the concept that somehow being like a nebbish and neurotic and underconfident character somehow indicates a depth, right?
yeah,
So it goes back to the star thing a bit, right? Um, but it's not exactly like this larger than life thing that you can't relate to either, right? Like it's confident. So when you see him branch out like that, and you see him show up on tracks, and he's styling on some of the tracks, like he's matching the kind of energy you get from Wrecking Crew, because they're all about, right, like how do we make like the most intelligent rap that forsakes none of the pocket of
Right, right,
a
right.
Smith and Wesson or um Gangstar song,
Yep.
right? It has all of that. It hasn't sacrificed it 1 second, but like, how do we stretch it without biting like Souls of Mischief, but like also making it something new, right?
Right.
And he comes right in there and he does it and even steals the light a little bit,
Yeah, no,
even
because
though
he
he,
gets it.
even though some people might be doubting and thinking he's just another producer on the mic type who's kind of who can land a cute kind of punchline every so
Right,
often. It's possible that someone could have that interpretation because of the deceptive simplicity of his approach at times, right? But it's
right,
like, no, actually, I'm stepping into this cipher. I brought my own mic. It's in the knapsack, but don't confuse this for Bohemian.
right,
I'm coming here to
right.
catch
No, I
wreck.
mean, he's
I'm
Wrecking
gonna
Crew
smash
is on
this.
Wrecking Crew is under that wave of like your art rap hero is Charles Hamilton, ours is Ghostface,
There you
right?
go.
Like
There we go.
you can have that over there. I'll take mine over here. And Suede's like, I get it. Like I'm down for this. So he
That's right.
always sounds right with Prem or with whoever, and
Right.
that song on Load Bearing Crow's Feet, he definitely stole the show. Um, but yeah, and that's another thing is Suede is one of how many people? Maybe 10 people who hit who always like gets deep on bass on a guest verse in the underground, right? There's a lot of people just kind of pushing features, right? And they're pretty good to okay, but there's a list of people where they're going nuts every time they touch them.
So just out of curiosity, like an example of someone who's more hitting in the okay range with what they put out.
And it's so weird because there's some people who are like, um, I don't know why I thought of this because it doesn't answer your question, but Conway is kind of better on guest verses than his own verses for me. Um,
Always. That's always
and
been the case.
it feels very Method Man, very like early
Yes,
Method Man of like, God, I'm
definitely.
tired of these RZA beats, and I wish I could get on some other stuff. But um, and then but then there's people like Def C who've just locked in and become a feature killer,
Hmm. Hmm.
um, and they're great wherever. Um, so there's people that I don't know. If I was thinking of like okay, like doesn't bother me, doesn't make me excited, it's probably somebody like Al Divino.
That's fair.
You know,
That's fair.
just like
Um,
nothing wrong with Al Divino, and when Al Divino shows up, I don't skip it. It's fine, but it's not. You know, some of those cats are spitters, not songwriters to me. You know,
hmm.
yeah.
Yeah, I'm just contemplating.
And it's weird
Mhm.
because it's not a black and white. Like I've seen people where I was like, "Ooh, he's become a songwriter now. This is where he turned," and then it goes back to the next album. You're like, yeah,
Right. I mean, like I think like Suede at some point made that
yeah,
transition, right? Like,
definitely,
um, certainly like the past year's output, I think is markedly different from the vast majority of which came before it. We saw the glimpses in 2020 and
yeah.
2021, 2022. Each project comes
Ooh,
out, and it's funny this truncated time of doing it. I remember very distinctly waiting forever for Midnight Marauders to drop and the will they or won't they tension
yep,
of of can these underdogs pull it off again? And I guess that, in some ways, he's connected to their legacy as well, right?
right,
Like, because, like I said, when we started out, there's a danger of his greatness slipping through the cracks because he's not what people tend to think of when they're making their, like, at this point, like, absurd, what would you call it, series of lists.
Yeah, yeah,
To
yeah.
sort of justify that you're a rap listener these days, you have to constantly be hitting everyone with a list of the absolute top five, whatever it is.
All
And
right.
I don't think he's very typically making the rounds of best whatever. But for some of us, it's very difficult to ignore. But Tribe are, kind of coming to the scene, and everybody knows that Q-Tip and Fife are not Big Daddy Kane and Cool G rap. Like, nobody
Yes, yes.
is making that claim, right?
Right.
Nobody is saying that every single bar from them in succession represents a new leap forward for this art form and an established um, standard that's going to be difficult to break for a very long time.
Yeah, I mean,
But no, but nobody can deny that the sum of it still conveys something different that's made all the more sweeter because you didn't think they could do it. And
I
AJ Suede steps right in there.
I was
And
thinking
those
about
three
De La.
releases, this,
I was
I mean,
thinking
he had
about
four
De La Soul.
releases.
Oh,
Yeah,
sorry. Yeah, four release. I was thinking about De La Soul when you were talking about the tribe stuff because De La Soul are so revered now, and
yeah.
I've lived a long life, and they were not so clearly revered back in the day, and they were slept on, and they were amazing live, and they were incredible innovators, and they didn't fit the wild barbarian pocket. They didn't fit the super artsy pocket because they were done with artsy as it took off. You know what I mean? Um, they
It
didn't
wasn't
fit.
Big L,
No, no,
right? It wasn't every bar was going to be this recognizable thing that made you say, oh shit, I'm glad I'm not the one in the corner cipher that was aimed at.
yeah,
Or he just set like the stretch on Bobito's show on fire, and I'm gonna like up my social cachet if I actually capture this and have it the next day
right.
in school. They never did any of that um in a way that was like um widely received as being that. And so they were there, and they had cemented so much respect that people weren't dissing them for the most part after a while, because they had become so far removed from the general view. It didn't even register to anyone to diss them in favor of whatever style they thought should dominate. So that stopped happening, and then they're kind of just there. And then the implication by default is that, oh, they must be some sort of bohemian media darling that college kids and people
Yep.
who write for Vibe magazine might dig, but we don't have to really respect them. Now these same dudes, have kids um, who listen to Megan Thee Stallion or whoever, and they're
Yep.
enraged that they don't know what's cool anymore, and it seems far and distant to them. So they're saying, "Damn, I wish it could, go back to when De La Soul was on
Right.
top," obscuring the fact that they were part of their marginalization,
Yep.
because you were so resolute and sectarian about Big
Yep.
L and the Lost Boys or whoever it was,
Right.
right, at the time. But now, in convenient retrospect, you can lump it all together and say it's all the golden era.
Yep. No, it
And
yeah, yeah. You
yeah,
and that's the thing with like it with a little retrospect and a little distance, people kind of felt like, oh shit, De La Soul was my favorite uncle the whole time, and I never even knew. You know what I mean? Like
yeah,
Uncle had the
I know.
cat. Was
Listen,
yeah, yeah,
listen. I stayed. I don't know, for whatever reason at that time, I didn't feel super compelled just to like buckle the pressure on these
right,
things. I didn't think that it was like only the dominion of white nerdy people to view works of art as having a future significance, even as the times change. I didn't think that was like some like terrible thing to do. So I stayed recognizing what they were doing at the point where it was just like incredible. I think by the time Balloon Mind State dropped, like I feel like all interest in what they were doing and what they had innovated upon had like completely dried up in any social sense. Like you weren't likely to throw a rock and hit someone else who thought it was ingenious.
Right.
It wasn't going to happen at that time. It had to wait, and
Yeah.
hopefully hopefully you didn't succumb to the usual thing, which was typical in the past, and hopefully is disappearing now. This idea that like by age 29, you've just cemented what you're going to listen to, and you're going to like stay within that mode and that claim of discernment um, until you die, or just abandon like your curiosity or interest in music altogether.
Yeah. No, and I wanted to, so talking about, you we said there's 4 releases, right? The
Mhm,
one that I wanted to talk about
mhm.
with you, because I think this is another element of the magic of Suede, right? Darth Swader 7, Rogues Gallery. When you look at the Rogues Gallery, the people that are on that, um,
I mean,
it's unbelievable. Yeah.
so I don't know if this is where you were going with it,
Go
but
for it. Go for it.
so before even pressing play, just looking at right the
Oh,
gallery of people that's
yep.
assembled, I'm like remove this dude from my mind first of all, right? Like you're too tapped in. This is a little too crazy. These are all people that I picked up on this year who don't have a huge amount of hype
Not at
except
all.
among except a focused, an extremely narrowly focused one
Yeah.
on people that I happen to pay attention to just because we've crossed paths on this music, and it's still really small. That's still a really small circle. And yes, I get that the degrees of separation from someone like AJ Suede aren't going to be that big because if you hang out with Curly Castro at any point, it seems to be like a law of physics that you get tapped into the avant-garde of right now,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah. I mean,
You
that's
just
great.
you just have a friendly relationship with Curly Castro, and all of a sudden you are on the correct path of collaboration, vision, and world building that you need to be, and you are a contributor to a Renaissance moment. So I'm not surprised in a sense that AJ Suede hooked up with these people. It was just this incredibly exciting thing to find that he just threw them all together in this moment on his beats. And then, wait a second, he's been working on his beat making.
Oh my God.
Like,
So yes, this is what we're going to talk about. And thank you for the 6 degrees of Curly Castro. That's amazing. So
that's
I
what it
would
is.
say, I would say, like the what struck me, because so first reaction, I see the track list, I go, "Holy shit! Did he make this album for me?" Like
That's right. That's,
I've interviewed most of these people. Like
yeah.
this is amazing. So, but then when you hear the beat to Jenga, and if you know Blue Azul's work with Spanish Red, that's a perfect beat for Blue.
Yep.
Like that's someone who knows Blue Azul's work, you know? And then you get Son of Solomon for Teller, and you know that's a home run. And Sleeping Dogs is like one of the best songs that Andrew and Jesse the Tree have done together. It's so catchy and fun uh, that I was like, oh, like part of the magic of AJ Suede is he has excellent taste. Like
Yes.
his taste is not numerical. It is not you have this many listeners, you will now work with me, right? It is I see what you do well, and I'm going to put it here.
Those people are all decidedly underground, but retain the mic rocking essence. They're all rocking with this. Even when Suede gives this lush, beautiful, concisely kind of laid out soundscape, he knew that these are the people who know how to make that rock the way that he would
Yep.
if presented with the same sound. And then you see the two tracks that he has that are solo, and like they just couldn't be a better elevator speech for what he does generally. And he leads off Waterbed with this incredible Diggable Planets illusion, flipping it directly into his own distinctive, like a Cassandra complex
Yeah.
yell about the environment. Who does that?
Who
Only
does
he
that?
could do that. That only no only him and KRS-One could that like even
Right.
like plausibly make sense. But KRS-One is not currently making music that anyone needs to pay attention to, and I'm not really like saying that out of disrespect. He doesn't need to,
Right.
but AJ Suede is of this moment and someone committed to that and successfully executing that. So it's him. It's left to him in this
Yeah.
moment.
Yeah. No, I mean it you start when you pull up Darth Vader 7, you're struck by this is an amazing cover, right? This is someone who's ready to release vinyl and understands the importance of cover design. This is someone who has grown leaps and bounds producing, mixing, mastering, and cleaning up the sound, right? Um, and providing the right sound for the right spaces, and knowing someone's great whether or not everyone else does, right? Like being able to say, like, there's a pocket of us who run around saying I'd rather listen to Solar 5, right? And like it's not a big pocket, you know, but we're ride or die, and to know that he sees that is awesome. That's great. Um, and so that the vision is impressive to add to the mix, to add to the flow, the mathematics of the flow, and uh, the sense of climax, right, that he brings to holding stuff behind the curtain, and the sense of the show, right? He understands the show.
It's like a like that kind of like 19th century magician concept. It sounds
Yeah,
like you're
yeah,
almost alluding to
yeah, like Houdini
like
type shit.
the
Yeah,
turn in the prestige
yeah, yeah,
kind of concept, right?
yeah.
Like, and it seems almost silly for us to like point that out as a possibility, like in a spoken spectacle art form, right? But that's how far removed sometimes it gets from what
Right,
it is. That's how alienated it's gotten, and that's why he's special in
right,
2022. He is not he's never been disconnected from those aspects of it, but it would be easy to, right? Like you can
right,
make an album in your bedroom, you can never tour, you can like kind of just be a musician based like in an extremely like um abstracted virtual space. You could do that. You could make no attempt
right,
to bother with that stuff. You can at this point like there's no rules, and it's a good thing, but it also allows for things that I don't question it because it's art and I say throw down and
right.
whatever comes out, but I do wonder how some of the stuff that is coming out would really be performed in a convincing way. So it's possible to put something out there that just doesn't take that into current consideration, right? And the pandemic kind of cemented that as a possibility. But AJ Suede's on some level is thinking, no, this is going to have to land. Maybe it's a really kind of swank affair and like rap reimagined as kind of like an intimate jazz club kind of setting where it would take place because maybe that's more my style. But I'm going to project it out. It's going to connect with the person in the crowd. They're going to have a response. I'm not throwing that out of the equation.
Right.
I'm going to assemble these people because I know that they are similarly committed to that. That's why they're rogue at this
Right.
point.
Right. No, it's yeah, it's funny. So I mean, and because I think as Suede gets bigger and gets on tracks with bigger names, I always chuckle a little bit because I'm like, ooh, if he gets on track with Mr. Fancy so and so, who's been on autopilot for the past 3 years, he's gonna eat him alive.
Right,
I can't wait
right.
for Suede to step into those rooms and thank you for putting me on the tracks and just destroy it.
Because like you said, he's still ready to go,
Yes.
right? Just because he's moving up in these levels, there's a sort of discipline here.
Yep.
So in that way, I'm getting like this Diamond D in the 90s kind of
Mm,
thing, right? It's someone who produces, gets the reputation for producing, but is not going to be the slouch on the mic and
right.
comes back with the sophomore effort and has upped the game considerably and is actually killing it, right? Or
Right.
Lord Finesse, although he's kind of killing it out the gate, but I would say
Yeah.
kind of Diamond D in that sense, like you you're actually seeing the growth of killing it. He's leaning in to that possibility of catching wreck, even as he's moving up the levels into what we consider to be like songcraft,
Yep.
right? And it would be very easy for him to kind of plateau
Right.
on that, and he has the cool voice. He could just use that as an instrument and accompany it and say any old thing,
Yep.
but that's not where he wants to go with it. He wants to catch wreck
Right.
in the cipher. He wants to walk out and saying that he smashed that and you remembered that and you're gonna come check me. And now you're gonna come check me because you're gonna want to buy a beat after that Rogues Gallery. That the DMs had to have been lit up.
I imagine. I mean, and it comes to a point if you want to be one of the best lyricists in the world,
Mhm.
um, there's a lot of people that will give you all kinds of rules to achieve it, right? But
Mhm.
like the end goal is this. The end goal is everything I say is important. It's not that the hook is important. It's not that uh, this song is a cool song. It's that you're waiting on every word I say. Kendrick had that for a bit. Ta has that. Rock Marciano has that. Right?
Definitely.
The people who you are riveted to every second of the song. You know, uh,
Listen, you want it, I got it. They're poisoning the water. You
yeah,
couldn't have anticipated the poisoning the water, even if in that 1 second you registered what he was citing and then flipping. So you're not turning it off. You're going to see where this bends, increases, and where it takes you. And it's like old time radio.
yeah,
Like when
yeah,
they have like the
yeah.
serial dramas on radio, it's that engaging, and you're that taken in by the persona. And
And
but rap is supposed to do that. And how far have we gotten that it
yeah.
seems fresh? But that's also the point of rap is to harken back and remind you of what is fresh.
Yeah, I mean, a lot of people have taken for granted, I think, all of the things they're they're in control of and have power over, right?
Right.
My sister is a poet. She told me something incredible. Um,
Hmm.
she was, studying under Franz Wright and doing all this cool stuff, and
Okay.
she was like, the every time I hit the enter key, that's my poetry. Every comma is my poetry, right?
Mm,
Like on this page, where I put things is my poetry, right?
mm,
These are all my tools, you know? If I hit the tab and I start in the middle of the page, that's my poetry, right? Uh, and that's, she never lost sight of that, right? And I think that's what you're talking about when you're talking about knowing how to kind of hold what you're the punchline for the right moment, or knowing how to pause, or knowing how to slow down and speed up. That these are all things you can control as an MC, um, and have fun at.
listen,
You know?
I'm not trying to be negative, but I agree in that your sister had a very brilliant insight
Yep.
there, by the way. Um, Props to her. Ransom, right?
Yep.
He
Yep.
doesn't do that. He doesn't do that. It's
Yeah.
not. It's no disrespect, but like
No. Talented. Talented guy.
he's trying to fill the page. He's become completely disinterested in what the negative space can do,
Mm.
and he's afraid of commas.
It totally.
It is what it is.
Yeah.
It's no disrespect, but
Yeah.
that's where it's come to, and it's kind of an extreme example. But it's a pattern running through rap. He
And
was the
is that
first
what?
one to
Do you
go
think
in that
that's
direction.
what people are? Do you think that's what this whole fucking flow argument is about? Like, so and so's not even on the beat. So and so's not even, Akai Solo's not even rap. Like, you think that's people who are like, whoa, you just aren't comfortable with the way they're using pockets and space. You're just
Listen,
not
so
comfortable with how experimental these people
I
are.
would have to say so because, like, on the Facebook groups where you have like this, I'm gonna sound like super negative here.
Do it.
The type of fans that think you could never do rap better than
Right.
like a late 90s
Yeah.
Gangstar song, that like the form could never be improved on that. So anything that deviates from that is just garbage to their ears.
Yep.
They will get behind a ransom or someone who is so workmanlike in their approach
Mhm.
that there's no commas, there's no caesuras, right? Like, and then they'll uphold it puritanically and say this is all that rap can be. And so when you show them an Akai solo record, unless they're taken in by how raw the sonic
Yeah.
landscape is, because Akai chooses the rough and rugged,
Yep. Yep.
right?
Yeah, he
Akai
does.
Solo has heard EPMD,
Yes.
EPMD's
Yes.
fourth album. I don't care. I don't care if he says he hasn't. He's heard it,
Yep. That
right?
makes
Okay.
sense. Makes sense to me.
So if they aren't somehow just lulled by that, yeah, they're gonna hear a Kai solo and they're gonna be like, oh, he landed the line there, and then he doesn't reappear for another 4/17ths of a measure. So this guy clearly doesn't know how to rap. Like there
Right.
are schools of thought that are aggressively like this. And so if they're actually like throwing that back to AJ Suede, who is clearly in the KRS-One school of using the pause as a rhetorical device, and
Yep.
it's not that hard to figure out, then yes, we have come to a point where some of this obsession with a narrow view of the golden era or what hip hop is supposed to be in a pure form is starting to become cannibalistic and pushing back against artists who are making sincere contributions that are actually reviving the
Right.
aspects of them seeing that you were lamenting losing. So it's worse than what happened to De La Soul, because De La Soul, at least you can make the argument that they were like at times flagrantly disrespectful to the norm, right? They're
Right,
tossing
right,
the record through the
right.
LL Cool J S guy's
Yep,
head, like in a way they kind of walked into it.
yep.
AJ Suede doesn't do that per se. He does have a lot of rhymes taking weaker approaches
Mhm.
and chopping their heads off and explaining
Right.
why they're ridiculous, but he also does it in a way that it's obvious it's like a getting busy thing. It's not like some like overly aggro take on the state of things. It's like
No,
another way to get busy and get funky. He just doesn't want it to not also bar out at the
right.
same time. So he's got to take some heads off. Um, and then another aspect, I don't know if you wanted to go into this, what really makes AJ Suede important, I think, is that AJ Suede is for you.
Right.
He wants you to win.
Yep.
He knows he's winning.
Right.
He actually knows that. He can articulate it quite well. He lays it out. I do this, they do that. They're
Right.
doing it this way. It's totally ridiculous and it's going to fail. So instead, I'm going to like chill here and do this particular thing. That's a very common theme of his rhymes, but it's always joined with a, but you can do this too. And it doesn't even have to be what I'm doing, but I'm telling you, the person that I have roped into this narrative, it's almost like some, I don't know, like some like early English kind of poem that was rhymed just so people could remember it and tell it at the campfire, and
Oh,
it has all these
yeah.
devices to draw people in, and he does that and he knows he's doing that, and then he sits you down and says, hey, look, these forces that are arrayed against you, that are
Mhm.
propagandizing you into accepting evil, look, they're also farcical. Look how
Right.
I dismiss them and expose them. You could do that too, and you should do that too. It's a
Yeah. No,
constant theme of his. He wants you
right.
to win.
There's no one. There's no audience that he's better than. Right. There's no.
Right.
There's no
Right.
rap fan that he's sitting there being like, yeah, I don't know. He's ready to kind of, you know, heal you or help you walk away from whatever the fuck you're stuck in,
Yep.
which is cool.
Yeah.
And I was gonna say, 100 Year Darkness. If it
Right.
took me a little longer to get into it, it's interesting. But I think where it stands for me for Suede this year is that's the project where it might have some of the slowest production he rapped over. Like when you when you
Definitely.
when you get into like, and I think Enterprise is one of his most important songs this year. I love Enterprise.
Mhm.
When you get into Enterprise, Drano, and you get into that period of the album, it's it's so slowed down and and beautiful. I mean, Small Professor does beautiful music, but you Suede is fitting himself to it, right?
Yeah.
And I always love that. I always love hearing a really talented rapper readjust themselves in a new setting. Um, that's
It's
really cool.
Ghost. It's Ghost and Raekwon on a late night freestyle on some college station, right? Like,
Yep.
how do you get this highly idiosyncratic thing that was connected specifically to RZA's beats to in real time, go over some artifacts or the damage instrumental instead
Right.
and still connect, right? And if you can do that for a whole album, like you said, you're in control of certain faculties of this art form that people forgot that they're able to do. The modulation of the voice, the changing of the impact. And if you want to, you can be intelligent about it. You
Right.
can have control over that impact. And if you have control over that impact, you're going to get the kind of listener who is charmed by the experience of being spoken to in real words by somebody who wants you to win. And he's going to continue to win for that. I'm calling it right now.
Yep. Yeah. And
It's going to level
there's
up.
right. That is that album is a real achievement for
Yeah,
Suede because a he just made himself fit in these beautiful ways. And I mean, Apologize Later remix is beautiful. There's a lot of great
yeah,
stuff on there.
yeah.
Um, Oil on Canvas feels like the hidden map to the future to me. Like,
I mean, I don't think I was happier than this year when I saw it drop because you've noticed like I'm not super on social media.
yeah, yeah,
I
yeah,
just have a busier rhythm of life that than that which would allow me to pay closer attention to it. So sometimes I miss that something has been
right,
announced. I
yeah,
just
yeah,
don't catch it. So it caught me totally by surprise, though I caught it on the day it I guess dropped at least on
yeah.
like the general social media. So I'm like, bet it's on.
Yep,
And I don't know what to expect. And I press play and it's all totally unexpected,
all totally
right?
unexpected. Yep,
Like we know that he has a penchant for the psychedelic for sure. We know that he has a tendency to go towards that which sounds lovely and beautiful.
yes,
Um, we know that he has great control over his voice and uses it like a paintbrush while at the same time crafting the lyrics that are going to hit and connect to the same person, who's looking for that big L thing to happen all the time. Um,
yep,
and yet, the sum of it is something that you haven't heard before
right,
from anyone, and it's a world builder in the way that the other albums kind of point to, but leave you wanting more, right?
right, right.
But here's the world. Like now we've crash landed on Planet Suede on this
I
album,
love that. I
right?
love that
You are
description.
fully in the world. It has an environment. You got to explore it. You're not sure what's around the corner, but you have no choice but to really start studying if you want to know where you're at.
And it has this kind of like, I mean, wonder. Wonder is such a big, lush, pretty song, you know. Um, yeah, I hit Blood Money Perez up and I was like, I can't believe you got to close on Wonder. What an incredible song. Um,
But and he really sewed that up.
yeah, yeah. I mean, it the like we talked about putting the right people in the right places over the right music, you know, that Wonder could be a radio hit if if it had that money behind it, right?
Sure.
Um, there's no question in my mind that it has the juice uh, to be that, whether it is or not, right? Numbers are out of our control with a lot of that shit, but like the DNA of I could play this around, you know, around your mom and she'd enjoy it, kind of thing. Um,
So I was gonna say, like, you know what this record actually sounds like?
but
If the telecommunications industry hadn't eventually become lockstep with the most reactionary political elements at the top of US society and become an actual weapon wielded
yeah,
to suppress dissent along with the war on drugs,
right, right.
right? And had actually preserved the radio format of the late 70s
Oh shit!
and allowed for cross genre collage of sound
Like
to
the
be a
'70s, yeah.
normative thing.
Yep,
That's this record.
that's so beautiful. Yeah,
That's this
that,
record. This is where the Black artistic mind is fully comfortable exploring aspects of rock music that mop headed, dusted out white dudes leaned into, and there's no contradiction whatsoever in it. It's the natural palette that makes sense to add onto and further explore. And nobody can say shit about it or be ignorant about it or try to box it and do it dirty like De La Soul
No.
or Diggle Planets or whoever, got marginalized by just a narrowness, an industry engineered narrowness of experience. And we get to enjoy it. We get to live our lives.
Yeah.
We get to
No.
be free. That's what this record sounds like.
White Rabbit Emerald Tablets. I mean,
Come on.
if you haven't heard that, you don't really know the year Suede has had.
Right.
That's one of those songs that's on that list that you need to know. And I think, yeah, I mean, it's so good because yes, Suede understands that kind of hazed out 70s AM radio rock
Yep.
just like he understands like the hardcore hip hop shit, and so
Right.
he can be in all these places uh and be himself in those places without like switching to fit, right?
Yep.
Just be the same Suede with all these components, so that's really
This is
dope.
a vindication. This is a
Yeah,
vindication for Justin Warfield. This is
right.
a vindication um, for the Juggernauts.
Yeah, for Living
This
Color, you know
is
what I mean,
this is
like
right, right,
for
right. This is
uh,
yes, this is the revenge
yeah,
of that. And I'm not saying he consciously claims that or he set out to do that, but it's there.
yeah,
It's there. Go listen to it and tell me that I'm completely off. Like
yeah,
that's where this lands. There's a part
yeah.
of it, some aspect of it that has to do with bringing together that which has been absurdly cast aside, right? And he's going to do that. It's part of how he gets down. It's part of what he thinks it means to rap. And
And that's why I said that with the Rosenberg thing, because I was like picturing if he just showed up on a real late compilation, or you know just a big pop song, my first thought would be I can't wait for these people to get a hold of Suede, because I wouldn't be afraid of Suede changing his art. You know, there's a confidence about it where you feel like no matter how big and white Suede's audience gets, it won't twist what he's doing.
right.
And that's something that emits from deep within him out.
Yeah,
So it's awesome.
definitely.
I feel very, very confident about the future. And if you're buying stock, buy stock now. But yeah, I appreciate it. Any closing comments about the Suede?
I think that more people should really give it a chance than are right now. I think this, like you said, um, this is the one to bet on, certainly for continued success. But I think this is also the one to take a chance on as a listener. For those of you out there, if you're listening to this, you are likely interested in becoming a better listener, right? Like
Yep, yep,
that's a big part of what you're doing if you're here with us.
straight up.
It's
Yeah,
very unlikely you'd bother if not. So
right,
be a better listener.
right,
And whatever you heard previously or whatever you concluded without doing much investigation, don't worry about all that.
right,
Listen to what AJ Suede puts out, appreciate it for the first level that it hits you, and go back to it.
right.
Don't just give it one run. be done beyond to, the next thing that everyone's chattering about.
Right. To do a sports metaphor, because I'm sick with sports metaphors,
Okay.
I would say there's, when the league is talented and there's a bunch of people who are talented, it's important to kind of parse out who's giving you empty points, right? Who is like filling the surface stats, but their team loses all the time. And who is actually elevating the wholeness of wherever they go, right? And Suede is one of those winning team players, right? His music is great, but the music he shows up on is great, right? Like
Hmm. Hmm.
there's a Suede effect. If you follow Suede, you're in good shape.
There you go.
Yeah, that's what I
There
would
you go.
say. Stay tuned, Camel Bucket Chats.